Another big mistake that we see is oversaturation in the market. Um, Using multiple brokers to approach the same carriers can often lead to
Yep, yep.
quotes being declined and carriers looking at you as a higher risk. It's not typical because a lot of people think it's a bidding system. We're just gonna get as many brokers, we're gonna bid this out. And that's typically not how it works, and it's a common misconception in our industry. So my tip would be just to work with someone that you trust,
Mm.
and that can manage your submissions strategically.
My next question is, what are common insurance mistakes made by new NEMT business owners and how can they be avoided?
Wow.
Is it
Sorry to
that
keep,
good?
yeah, no, that's great. Choosing the cheapest policy is probably the number one mistake that we see. A lot of time, focusing on only costs can lead to coverage gaps, exclusions. There's things built into contracts and insurance policies that make them cheaper a lot of times. So realizing that you need to focus on value, and reviewing those proposals thoroughly to prioritize that value. I think overlooking claims is a mistake. Ignoring claim history can prevent you from addressing some reoccurring issues. I think by regularly reviewing claims to identify and mitigating trends can be good. And also, when you're reviewing claims, look at your open loss reserves. Those are things that can go against you on your loss runs. Carriers can use that against you, even though it's not a closed claim. They just set the money aside and they use that against you. They can non-renew you, and I can go into more depth than that if you want. Um, Going into this venture alone is a mistake that a lot of people make. Trying to handle complex insurance situations without professional help. There's a lot of complexities for NEMT insurance and the whole insurance industry. Um, you know, and so partnering with a broker that specializes is really important to help uh, mitigate those complexities. And another big mistake that we see is oversaturation in the market. Um, Using multiple brokers to approach the same carriers can often lead to
Yep, yep.
quotes being declined and carriers looking at you as a higher risk. It's not typical because a lot of people think it's a bidding system. We're just gonna get as many brokers, we're gonna bid this out. And that's typically not how it works, and it's a common misconception in our industry. Um, so my tip would be just to work with someone that you trust,
Mm.
and that can manage your submissions strategically.
Absolutely. We talk about that a lot
Yep.
because like here in California, there's only like a handful of carriers that will write business for NEMT businesses. So if you're working with multiple brokers, and I have to say NEMT insurance brokers because I don't want to get them confused with the other broker, but if you're working with multiple brokers, then you run the risk of, you know, that the brokers that you're working with submitting to the same carriers and now they're looking at all of these applications that
Yes.
the insurance brokers have submitted on your behalf. So yeah, I'm glad you mentioned that.
John, can you talk a little bit more about like why it may not be ideal to like during midterm submit an application to work with another insurance carrier? Because I know a lot of time people start to shop around to, get different quotes for an insurance premium if they're not satisfied with the current carrier that they're working with. And sometimes like, they get approached by other carriers or other agents. Do you recommend waiting until it's time to do your insurance renewal, or should you start shopping around prior to that?
Yeah, that's a great question. So I'm going to talk to your point for the auto industry, right? For workers' comp, we don't recommend anybody switching midterm unless there's a contractual issue. It leads to something called a split mod, and it can affect pricing. But for auto, the answer is it depends. We have switched several midterm. Typically, it's due to a contractual issue.
Hmm.
If it's just price, it's hard to get the carriers motivated to quote it midterm outside of the renewal date. And the reason is because they have such a low closing ratio quoting it midterm. So we typically, if that's what a business owner wants, we typically go to our carriers and tell them the reasons why, explain to them the opportunity, and come up with the narrative, and ultimately try to work with the carrier to come up with some agreement. But if that's something that you'd like to look into, it's something that we can definitely look into and see how we can navigate that situation.
What factors should be considered when determining the right level of coverage for an NEMT business to balance protection and affordability?
Yeah, so I think the most important thing is meeting your state insurance requirements, right? Is meeting the PUC in California, their insurance requirements. If you're just doing intrastate NEMT, which the majority of NEMTs, it seems like they are not going outside of state limits and going interstate per se, you have to meet the CPUC requirements. If you're going crossing state lines, and you have to meet some federal requirements. So sorry, I went off kind of the weeds over there into the weeds. But also ensuring your limits meet higher requirements set by your providers. You know, you wanna get limits and coverage that meets your contracts, right? If you need more, then obviously that's a discussion that you need to have with your broker, and he or she should be able to discuss the pros and cons of doing that. And again, weigh your coverage needs, you know, against your budget. Ultimately, more coverage is going to be more expensive, right? So if your budget allows it, then that might be okay. If it doesn't, then that's something that the discussion that you need to have.
Okay, I have a scenario for you. So let's just say I'm a new NEMT provider starting out in California, and I come to you and I say, I'm just going to work with private pay clients and I need like state minimum, right? Um, and you write the policy for me. Maybe it's 300,000, maybe it's 500,000. I don't know. So then you write the policy, and then I come back to you 3 months later and I say, you know what, this private pay business in my area isn't too great. I want to work with a NEMT insurance broker. And this NEMT insurance broker is asking me for $1 million policy, right? What would the process look like for me to go back to you and for you to reach out to other carriers to increase my current limits?
Yeah, that's a great question, and it happens very frequently. So if you do find this happening to you, it is something that happens often. And it's as simple as us getting a copy of the contract, providing it to the carrier, and telling them we need increased limits. And typically, most of the time, depending on the limits, the carrier will be able to do it. And if they're not, we can get a standalone excess or umbrella policy depending on the contract.
And would that require me to pay another down payment, or would they just roll the cost into the monthly premium?
Typically, it's rolled. It depends how you're paying. If you have a payment in full, then there an additional premium would be due in full. But if you are premium financing, like I've mentioned in the past, it typically can be rolled into your finance agreement, so it could be added to your monthly payments.
That was a good question and a great way to segue into this next question. And I'm going to read it directly because I want to make sure I get it right because we get this question all the time as well. Um, some contracts require NMT business to carry a policy with 5 million limits. How much more expensive is a $5 million policy compared to a $1 million policy?
Yeah, that's a great question. And the question of price comes up frequent. And it's hard to answer because it's going to depend on which carrier you go to, or I'm sorry, which excess or umbrella carrier you go to. All of them have some different pricing. Your claims history, with whatever line that you're wanting quoted. If obviously if you have 5 vehicles and you have $10 million in claims, it's going to be more expensive than somebody who has zero claims. Number of vehicles and obviously state laws. But I think a good rule of thumb to have is if you want to go between like a $1 million to a $5 million policy, you're probably going to be paying between 25, I'd say 40% of the total premium in that excess policy.
It sounds like it's definitely going to cost you more to have a $5 million policy, but I'm sure there are some ways that you can work with your NEMT insurance agent to make it work. But from a business owner standpoint, if you are requiring me to go out and get a $5 million policy, I better see a return, right? So business better be flowing in because I'm going to need to be able to pay for that,
Right.
pay that premium. So,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
so we have one last question, and this question is, wow, this is a really good question. Why are some insurance carriers withdrawing from offering NEMT coverage? I think that is a question that I have been asking myself for the last few months because there are so many community members that have reached out to us
Mm-hmm.
saying, hey, I used to be with this company and now they've pulled out and now I'm lost and I don't know what to do. So, John, what is the reason why these companies are pulling out? And let's just say I'm with this company, they pull out. What am I supposed to do in this situation?
Yeah, no, it's very frustrating for business owners. And if you're an NEMT, you've seen the most recent one with Cardigan General, who has lost their paper with accredited, and they've non-renewed all their accounts. And ultimately, why it happens, right, is having more claims and premium dollars that are coming in, and the carrier loses their program. But a lot of times the carriers pull back because NEMT it's a high, there's a lot of trips, there's a lot of driving involved, a lot of mileage put on, and that increases claims risks. Rising you know legal costs, and tighter state regulations put strain on profitability in the industry. Increased litigation. NEMT is an industry where you transport sometimes vulnerable clients, and things happen, and claims can get expensive, and premium dollars might not match that. So ultimately, the reason why some carriers are withdrawing is because they're not seeing profitability. That is ultimately the reason. But that goes back to safety and all these things in the industry. But as old carriers come out of the industry, new carriers come on, and there becomes opportunity to have cost savings, to have increased coverage, and staying up to date with all the carriers is really important.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, I mean, from the sounds of it, I feel like, as our NEMT community, we have to kind of take the blame for it too, because
Mm.
we have companies out there where they are not providing driver training. And you have to train your drivers because when you don't, accidents happen, claims happen, and it impacts the industry as a whole. So definitely let's get these drivers trained.
Just going to also say, and they're not meeting the state requirements as well, right? And so, that's another factor. Like they're not operating their business the correct way. And so that could also contribute to why carriers decide to pull out from these different states.
all of this was, really good information. And John, I know you mentioned that there are new carriers that are entering this market. Um, with that being said, how do we identify that these carriers are legit, right? Because there's so many scams, there are so many things that are going on in our world today. And when a new carrier pops up on our radar, is there any type of way that we could um, just make sure that the company is one, um, a legit company? Because I know sometimes Monica and we've come across some stuff in our emails and we're just
Yeah.
like, I've never heard of them. Like, we want to be extra cautious. So one, how can we verify that these companies are legit? And two, is there a way that we can actually search reviews on the different carriers that are out there to see what previous clients are saying about maybe their claim process or what have you?
Mhm.
Yeah, yeah. So every insurance company has an AM Best rating, right? A financial backing. And so looking at that is very important. It will have, if they have a good financial stability, there'll be an A rated, A minus, A plus, whatever it might be. They could be in the B's. And then I think so. For me personally, what we do at our agency is we vet our carriers before we allow, an open market to go to them. So we vet them. We have communications with underwriters. We try to find out what paper they're writing on, and then we ultimately get appointed with them. And so I think the easy answer to that is just work with your broker. If something doesn't seem right or seems fishy, because there's so many scams out there these days, if something seems fishy, just work with your broker. And like I mentioned, that should be someone that you trust. And if it's a new program and it seems too good to be true, it might be too good to be true, right? The NEMT insurance industry will talk, right? If premiums are a certain amount and then you're getting, someone telling you they're going to be a quarter, an eighth of the amount of premium, that might be a red flag. So, but ultimately, just discussing this with your broker and trying to find out if it's a legitimate program.
Absolutely. So
Yeah.
I agree. Definitely, I am pro NEMT insurance broker because honestly, I wouldn't want to have to go out there and vet these different carriers myself, especially not being knowledgeable about the insurance market. So
Mhm.
you said it best, John. Definitely reach out to an NEMT insurance broker for your business needs.
Yeah. So, John, I know we asked you a lot of questions. You provided us with a lot of good information, but is there anything that we did not ask that we should have asked, or that you would like to just share with us in general?
I think you guys did a really good job at formulating these questions. These questions hit on a lot of things that people in the industry are interested in. So I think just to highlight, work with someone that you trust and that has knowledge in the industry, and really use them as a partner in your business. And and lean on them for expertise, advice, and if you guys are working together, they should steer you in the right direction for success.
So, John, I have a bonus question for you. If an NEMT provider is coming to you for a quote, what information is needed from that individual?
Great question. This comes up all the time. One is I like to look at a current certificate of insurance. I like to know what market you're with and why you're with that market. So a certificate of insurance helps. Number two is currently valued loss runs. And loss runs are essentially in writing your claims history, and we'll need to get that over the past 5 years. And that's something that is we can help with getting it. And due to privacy laws, a lot of carriers won't release it to anybody but the incumbent agent. Um, but we'll need to get those. And we'll work with you on getting those. And the third thing is just a vehicle and a driver's list. Um, the typical information is for drivers is name, date of birth, driver's license, and vehicles is your VIN number and the value, and what kind of special equipment you have in the vehicle, gurney, wheelchair, if it's ambulatory, bariatrics, anything of value. And then from there, we start building a submission, start building a profile, start building a narrative, and determine what the best course forward is. A lot of times I get calls and I tell people, you're in a good spot. You're well placed. So there's no shame on my end for doing that as well.
I want to add something onto your bonus question, Monica. If there is a NEMT business owner that is considering hiring a new driver, what is something that the business owner should look for on the NVR, which will signal like, hey, stay away from this guy. This could negatively impact your insurance. Find someone else.
Yeah, great question. Typically, automatic disqualifiers are anything that would give you 2 points on your driving record. Automatic disqualifiers are DUI convictions, reckless driving convictions, and if they have a significant number of like speeding violations, a lot of moving violations, any issues with suspension and the revocation of their license. And then their age. I think, depending on which carrier you go to, you're going to see 23 and 25, but at least 5 years of driving experience. And then over 70, if they are over 70 and want to drive and want to be employed, typically a medical certificate will be needed for the driver. But driving experience, that will tell a lot on how they're going to drive your NEMT vehicle.
What about a failure to appear?
That could affect you, depending on what the FTA is for. I've seen it where the carriers look at that as a negative, and I've seen it where the carriers have looked past it. So it's carrier specific, and it depends on what the FTA is for.
Okay. Yeah, I recently had a consultation call and he mentioned that. So I thought I should get an answer to his question. So thank you so much for answering that. So John, you have been wonderful. Thank you so much. Can you tell our viewers if they are interested in working with you, how to get in contact with you? And we'll wrap it up after that.
Yeah, of course. If anybody wants to get in contact with me, you can call me on my business phone. It goes directly to my cell phone, and I can give you that number if you'd like. It's going to be 559 area code 241-8963, or you can email me John JOHNK at jgparker.com. I try to get back with people, and I try to be as fast as I can. So if you do get to me, I will get back to you as fast as I can and have that conversation.
Well, I hope you're ready for those calls, John.
No.
All right. John. So thank you so much. Thank you so much once again for being on our platform. Have a great day, John.
Thank you, Monica and Jasmine. Appreciate your time.
Thank you. Bye.